Oh, it's just amazing to be doing this. I must be the only person on earth who is able to do this at the moment. What's that? Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. This time round we've got something really rather special. There are just those moments that life gives you very occasionally which take your breath away. And this is one of those moments, really. I've been very fortunate to be around Lamborghinis for a great number of years, for almost all of my working life. But this particular car here, this Countach, was Mr. Lamborghini, Ferruccio Lamborghini's one and only personal Countach. There's a bit of Lamborghini history involved here. Ferruccio Lamborghini, of course, founded the company in 1963, and the political unrest, the trade unions sort of calling strikes very often, the industrial relations that broke down, just distracted him and vexed him so much and ground him down that at the end of March 1974, he decided to finally sell his remaining shares in Lamborghini. And that was just when the Countach was coming into production. It was shown at Geneva in 1971. Bob Wallace had done some initial road testing with the car with a 5-litre engine. It proved unviable due to cooling issues and the engine being unreliable. So Bob Wallace spent 3 years developing the Countach into a workable supercar. And by that time, Ferruccio had had enough, really. So fast forward to 1980, and Lamborghini was in serious trouble financially. It was just on the verge of going bankrupt. And Ferruccio Lamborghini's close personal friend, Ubaldo Scarzi, who was the head of sales at Lamborghini, contacted Ferruccio and said, "This may be your last chance to buy a new Countach. Do you want to fulfill your ambition?" And Ferruccio said yes. And what happened was this car was a cancelled order. It was a friend of his in Rome who ordered the car in red. And Ferruccio said, well, okay, it was all worked out. He would have this car. He said, there's only one colour for a Countach, and that's white. So they colour changed the car in the factory before delivery to white with the black interior, which was already constructed. So Ferruccio took delivery of this car in May 1980 and fulfilled his lifelong dream to have or not lifelong, but since they were announced, to have a Countach. This is what's called an LP400S 2 low body. So the original Periscopio Countach, the one without the flared wheel arches, came into production in '74. And then the next one along was the LP400S with the wider wheel arches. And then very quickly after that came the S2. The difference, the immediately identifiable thing with the S1 is the Bravo type wheels. They've actually got the tubes protruding from the holes in the wheels. Very pleasing to the eye, actually. And they went for this smoother design on the S2. And at the end of S2 production, just before they started making the Series 3s, and this is quite important, they changed the car quite dramatically. They actually increased the height of the car by 30 millimeters or thereabouts at roof height here. And the reason they did that is because people couldn't fit in the early series Countaches. Bob Wallace, the Lamborghini test driver, was 6'2", but it's my belief he was longer in the arm than longer in the body. So he had enough headroom in these cars, but quite a few people discovered that they really couldn't fit in them terribly easily. And I can completely endorse that because I have trouble getting into these cars with because I'm long, I'm 6 foot tall, but I'm long bodied and short legged, and I'm struggling for headroom. And I drove a Periscopio around the Goodwood racing circuit about 3 years ago, and I had to wear a crash helmet as well. And it was literally like this, driving it. It was just not pleasant at all. So Lamborghini increased the size of the Countach. The whole thing just went by about 30 millimeters. And that 30 millimeters makes a huge difference. You can actually get in and out of these cars and you can actually drive them far more comfortably. But the funny thing is, the market being the way it is, collectors being the way they are, people want the low body cars. They're more collectible and they're more valuable for that matter. So this is an early S2 low body. So this is, for just about every reason imaginable, a very collectible Countach. This car has just recently changed hands for a sum that I will not disclose, but suffice it to say it's a world record price for a Countach. It's many times more than a Countach like this would normally change hands for. I'll say no more than that, but it was the creator's personal car. And there's lots of correspondence here, a personal letter, some of which I just cannot show because this is literally the first time this car has ever been in the public domain. It was left by Ferruccio to a very close relative of his, and then it changed hands once after that, and it's just changed hands again, so it's a very private situation, this. And I'm extremely privileged to be the first one that's actually bringing this, with the new owner's permission, into the public domain for the first time. We've got lots of files here that's the original brochure, but we've got letters here. That's the original libretto for showing Ferruccio Lamborghini as the first owner. A personally written letter, which I can't show, but it's just a pleasure to be able to see this car anyway and just sample this piece of Lamborghini history. And there are many, many photographs here of Ferruccio with the car, famous photographs really. And these were supplied by the previous owner of the car and also through the offices of Olivier Nemesh, the Lamborghini historian, who actually brokered the deal. So a wonderful thing to be able to have the privilege of even touching it and actually getting up close and personal with this car. But what the new owner has decided to do, the car's been in a private collection. It's been very nicely restored. The car is in generally very good condition. There's one or two things which we're going to look at, and it's a massive privilege and a massive honor to be able to work on this car for the new owners and bring it up to hopefully a very high level. So we're going to start just looking around the car. I'm going to road test it. It's the first time in many years that it's actually been out on the road in anger, because the car is so precious and so valuable. The panel work has never been changed on the car. All the chassis, the structure of the car is all absolutely factory original. And it's quite a responsibility to take this car out and drive it. But eventually the music stops and somebody has to pick up that and say, okay, we'll get this car working beautifully again. I've been given that brief by the new owner, so that's what we're going to do. It's quite astonishing to think that there's been a handful of people only who've driven this car, and one of those is the man himself, Ferruccio Lamborghini. And this has been handed down over the successive times of the car recently, and this is the keyring of the car, and it's got writing on it there, personal handwritten note saying Ferruccio Countach, and that is actually Mr. Lamborghini's writing. That's him who wrote that on the key fob. The car is just full of delights like that. The dashboard is original from 1980. It's never been recovered. A lot of the interior is original. Just a real piece of history. Well, I can't tell you what an amazing experience this is, driving Mr. Lamborghini's Lamborghini Countach. It's just mind-blowing. It's quite a responsibility because this car has not been driven for years because people have been too frightened. It's too valuable. I can't obviously share how much it's changed hands for, but it's by several multiples a world record for a Countach value. And a lot of people have actually shied away from driving the car for the last 5 years because it's worth a lot of money. But at the end of the day, the new owner wants it to work properly, so work properly it will. I can identify a couple of things which aren't right. The The clutch, I'm not convinced is disengaging fully, because the gear change is a little bit stiffer. I mean, the car's warm now. The gear change is a little bit stiffer than I would anticipate. It's a little more obstructive. The synchro mesh is having to work too hard, and that tells me that the clutch is suffering from drag. It's not disengaging fully. So we need to have a look at that. It could just be the fact that it needs bleeding through. It needs fresh fluid putting in it, purging of any air that's in there, and we take it from there. But other than that, I'm just going to slowly pick the speed up a bit here, not go too mad, because we've just got to do some more experimenting and checking. Yeah, it's driving well. I'm just noticing the car's tramlining a little bit. It's just moving about on the road a bit. So what we'll do is check the suspension rose joints, as they're called, and the links on the suspension. I just suspect there's something not quite right. I have looked at the tyres and they are wearing evenly. So it's not a wheel alignment problem per se. But I must say again, it's thrilling to be driving this Lamborghini Countach. Just thrilling. We're going to make a nice job of this, and yeah, I'll be very, very happy to hand this over to the new owner once it's sorted out. Well, that concludes that road test. I mean, the car is generally in really good shape. What I'm going to do is, just while it's fresh in my mind, what I do is just write everything down on a good old, clipboard and pen. Right. Tram lining. I'm sure that's going to be suspension joints. We need to look at this door lock, because that is not good. And the clutch is dragging, so yeah, which is associated with the gear change. Engine wise, it's really strong, it's really good. So there we are. Let's set 2 on our list and see what we can do. Well, following the road test and giving the car a really good coat of looking at, the tram lining we are investigating, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. The clutch, we strongly suspect, is just air in the system. It needs to be bled out. At worst, it'll need adjusting, but it's definitely not working properly. And one of the problems we've also got is this door lock. Sometimes it's the smallest things with these cars, setting everything up, making it work as it should do, which either sort of makes or breaks the pleasure of ownership and using it. And this is one example. The door on the Countach here, the door lock, the release button is underneath here. It's actually the same button exactly as Bertone used on the Miura. And you should really just pull that and the door opens. And as you can see, I'm struggling to do that. The reason for that is this locating pin here, this tapered pin, actually fits in a receiver in what's called the striker plate on the B-post here. This should be a perfect round shape here, this little brass insert, so that the tapered locator goes in there. And as you can see, it's actually damaged it and bent it out of shape. With the best will in the world, there's not a lot we can do about that. So we're going to replace it with another one that we happen to have found. And yeah, we'll just change that to make it line up perfectly with the door. This has probably been like this for a while, but it's not doing anything any good, least of all the person who uses it. It should be really, really easy to operate this. So we'll just take this off. There we go. Now what I'm going to do as a precaution to stop this plate moving around too much is just grip that. We've got some shims here as well. I'm going to fit those. because it's actually out of alignment in two ways. One is that way we can cope with because this is designed to slide across, but moving it this way, this is fixed in the door, and obviously we can't move the pillar, so we have to actually shim it out forward and back to get it right. Okay. So I'm going to set this up now to roughly where I think it should be, and then just nip it up and see if we can get it to play. Right, let's try that. This is a first attempt. Could need a second or third, but we'll give it a go. Yeah, I've put too many shims in there, so we'll take one out and try again. Almost just finger tight and no more. Little tiny nip up, just so that if it does need to move around, it can sort of do so of its own accord. Just not really tight at all. Let's give that a try. That's better. Look at that. What a difference. All the difference in the world. Very happy with that. We'll tighten that up now, finally adjust it. Job done. Tick on the list. As you can see, it's a perfect circle, undamaged there. If I close the door, it fits beautifully in there. And then springs up as it should, no damage. Pieces. Very happy with that. Well, having driven the car, one thing I have observed is obviously the tram lining that I talked about. And tram lining is an interesting expression. It's sort of got out of fashion because manufacturers have been able to make cars handle better. But tram lining is a phenomenon that sort of high-performance cars had in the 90s. When there was more questions being asked of the suspension in terms of the power that was going through it and the braking forces involved and things of that nature. And tram lining is basically, if you imagine if you're on a bike or a motorbike and your wheel gets stuck you're riding in San Francisco and you go and your front wheel gets stuck in the tram line, you sort of almost feel as though you're out of control. That was the phenomenon. Generally, Countaches don't do it. They don't suffer from it, but this tyre here is one of the back tyres. It's a 345 section tyre, 345. It was sort of by far the biggest tyre you could get for a road car at that time. Pirelli and Lamborghini were always pushing the boundaries with tyre technology, always pushing, which is great because then the benefits cascade to everybody else as well. But because the tyre is so wide, if the contact patch isn't exactly on the road, if it's sort of a little bit like that, too much camber one way or the other, it actually reduces the grip and the control massively. So it's really important that this tyre is absolutely flat on the road. And with the joints on the back suspension that we're going to look at, it doesn't take much to throw this out. So it really does affect the handling quite considerably. Let's have a look at what Marcus has found with the back suspension. Well, Marcus, I see you've taken some bits off. Have you found anything untoward?
Yeah, initially we had some play in the wheel and rear suspension. On stripping it down on the track control arms, we found play in both the rose joints, inner and outer. Which obviously control the track of the rear wheels,
yep.
But also on the top inner arm controls the camber. We've also got play in that rose joint as well. So yeah, we've got excessive play in those three joints at the moment.
Right. And what about the other side? Is that okay?
There is the same play on the other side. So obviously when we strip it down, we're probably going to find the same on that side. So we're going to have some new rose joints
Right.
fitted on those arms
Okay.
before we carry out a tracking on it.
Well, that would explain the tram lining on the road. The Countach is one of the few cars to use what are called rose joints. They're commonly used in racing cars. It's basically a globe inside, it's a sphere inside this casing with a hole drilled through it, and there's no play in these whatsoever. There's no compliance, as it's called, and no rubber anywhere to allow any movement on the suspension, between the suspension and the body. And very few road cars have these because they can be quite harsh. They transmit every last irregularity in the road through to the car. You know, most manufacturers go for comfort rather than uncompromising handling, but Lamborghini used rose joints at the time. As I say, very few cars use them even to this day. And once they've got a tiny bit of play in them, it can make a difference. So that's great, Marcus. We'll get some new ones. We'll fit them. Obviously, we need to do the four-wheel alignment.
Yeah.
And then we'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
So what Marcus is doing here is we're bleeding the clutch because there was indeed some air in the hydraulic system. No particular leaks. It just happens sometimes. They just settle with time, and you get a bit of a weep out of the cylinder on the clutch release arm. So we've bled it through. We've topped the fluid up with fresh fluid, and the pedal has improved. So I think that's going to be fine. It's releasing. The stroke of the release is much longer than it was, so it's all good. I think that's going to sort that problem out fairly easily too. Well, I've just warmed the car through now. We've done the work on it. We've replaced 2 suspension links and 2 suspension joints. So I've just warmed the car through, and yeah, it does feel as though it's tracking a bit more accurately. One thing I'm going to do is see if it's a Lamborghini Countach. Let's find out. Yes, it's a Lamborghini Countach. It's there. And she's tracking straight and true, just great. I can change gear really easily with just one finger, so the clutch problem is eliminated. It's firing beautifully on all 12 cylinders. Those horses are very much present and correct. Wow. I think even Mr. Lamborghini would be happy with this. Just great. Oh, that gear change is so much better. It was making me wince before because I knew it was putting strain on the synchromesh on the gearbox. We only did a very short distance in it, so there'd be no long-term damage, but everything's behaving itself. Oil pressure's where it should be. We'll just try that again. Oh yes! These cars are still so thrilling. I mean, this must have been mind-bending in 1980, driving one of these, when a lot of cars still had very wheezy pushrod engines and brakes that you needed a written application in triplicate to use with any degree of accuracy. This is just absolutely wonderful. Oh, what a joy to be driving Ferruccio Lamborghini's Lamborghini Countach. To be sat in this seat where the man himself drove this car. Wonderful.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come fly with me, let's fly away. Come fly with me, let's float down to Peru. In Llama Land, there's a one-man band, and he'll hoot his flute for you. Come fly with me, let's take off in the blue.
Well, the car's running fabulously. It's a bit of a sort of stop and think moment, really, a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And it's just amazing to be doing this. I must be the only person on earth who is able to do this at the moment. What's that?
Angels cheer 'cause we're together. Weather-wise, it's such a lovely day. You just say the words and we'll meet the birds down to Acapulco Bay. It's perfect for a flying honeymoon. Say, come fly with me, let's fly, let's fly. Back up, let's fly away.
Well, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video. I hope you've enjoyed it, something a little bit different, and we'll be back with something else soon.